I was never one for sappy goodbyes or mulling over the what-ifs of life. Amelia, 35, a manager, that was enough of an introduction for anyone. There I was, standing tall, suitcase gripping my sweating palm. The creak of those steps under my weight was like a soundtrack to this not-so-graceful exit. At the bottom of the stairs, Jeremy leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, the ghost of a smirk playing on his face. It was the smirk that said, "You won't last a week without my money." I despised that smirk. Linda, the queen of passive-aggressive comments, was perched on the arm of the plush love seat, a throne she made from judgments and sly digs. "My boy always did like headstrong," she said, inspecting her perfectly manicured nails. Zoe, the new trophy, was a human-sized Barbie perched awkwardly on the edge of the couch. Her legs were crossed so tight I wondered if she could feel her toes. "I've packed my things," I managed, my voice steady but my insides churning. It felt strange, declaring something so mundane at a moment that felt like the end of an era. Jeremy chuckled, a low, infuriating sound. "What, no tears, Amelia?" he prodded, finding humor in what he thought was my misery. It was typical Jeremy, kicking when he thought you were down. "Not for you," I shot back, clenching my jaw to keep my composure. Linda's laugh slithered out next, sharp as a knife. "Why don't you join us for dinner, one last time?" There was a challenge in her eyes, daring me to break, to show the crack in the armor I spent years fortifying. The idea was ludicrous. Who in their right mind would have a farewell dinner with their ex and a shiny new thing? But I couldn't resist the opportunity to show them that I wasn't leaving as the defeated wife. "Sure," I said, surprising even myself. "Could be fun." Zoe's eyes shot up in surprise, not expecting the guest of dishonor to accept a seat at this twisted table. Jeremy's smirk fell a notch. "Great," he said, "I'll get the wine." It was his white flag, his last attempt at playing the courteous host. Linda simply sniffed, turning her attention to Zoe. "Dear, why don't you help Jeremy with the wine? The good stuff, upstairs. You remember where it is," she said, sending Zoe off like a child on an errand. As Zoe scampered off, I noticed her heels were too high, her steps uncertain. Poor girl was walking on stilts, trying to measure up in a world where the bar was set impossibly high. "It's gonna be a long night," I mumbled under my breath, realizing that this dinner was more a game of chess than a meal. Every word would have to be calculated if I was to walk out with my head still held high. The dining room, an awkward tension hanging in the air, contrasting with the clinking sound of cutlery. Linda, sitting at the head of the table, smirks as she turns towards me. "Enjoy the meal, darling. It's not every day you sit down to something that hasn't been microwaved." I fix a smile, keeping my tone even. "Thanks, Linda. It's been hard to find time between work hours. Not like I've got the luxury to stay home." Across from me, Jeremy stirs in his seat, a hint of red creeping up his neck. "I'm on it, you know. Jobs don't just fall out of the sky, and the last place? They didn't know a good worker when they saw one." "I can't help it," I laugh. "A good worker? They practically threw you out. How much was it you cost em? Couple thousand?" Zoe, a hint of curiosity painted on her otherwise perfect face, forks a salad leaf, not eating, just poking. "A few thousand?" Jeremy's jaw tenses, his hand tightening around his knife. That was blown way out of proportion. I made a small mistake. Amelia was just looking for someone to pin it on. "I guess being late most days and missing deadlines is small now," I say, coolly taking a sip from my glass. Linda chimes in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Well, accidents happen, right? But Zoe dear, you must be careful, clumsy can sometimes run in the family." Zoe gives a tight-lipped smile, her eyes still fixed on her unperturbed plate. "I believe everyone has a bad day now and then." "Right, Jeremy?" Jeremy shoots a glance at Zoe, then back at me. He's desperate to change the subject. Let's not dwell on the past. I'm focusing on the future. I lean back in my chair. Sounds grand, hopefully, this time the future doesn't have a repeat ending. As the uncomfortable silence settles, Linda clears her throat, a signal for a subject change. So, any plans after today, dear? Once you pack up? I glance around the table, my resolve firm. First good night's sleep in months, I reckon. Zoe, finally putting down her fork, looks up. There's a flash of something, pity maybe, or curiosity. Sounds nice, actually. Jeremy, eager for an ally, turns to Zoe. Babe, tell Amelia about the job you were telling me about. Zoe nods, a little spark of enthusiasm in her voice. Oh, it's nothing much, just an opening in the admin department. Might be something for you to look at? I look at her, really look, and there's something genuine there. I'm surprised. Thanks, Zoe. Might just take a look at that. The meal continues, the earlier sparks of tension drowned out by mundane chatter. The clinking of cutlery against the plates fills the room as Linda keeps eyeing me like a hawk, waiting to swoop down with another snarky comment. So tell me, she says, leaning back in her chair with a smirk, still living out of that tiny apartment? I push the salad around my plate, barely suppressing a smile. Actually, Linda, I'll be moving soon. Got a little place closer to work now. It's mine. Jeremy chokes on his drink, coughing into his napkin while his mom's eyebrows shoot up. You? A house? Where'd you get that sort of cash? He sputters. Well, if you'd asked me anything about my life in the past year, I say, cutting into my steak, you'd know about the money Grandma left me. All $700K of it. His greedy eyes widen, and I can almost see the dollar signs flashing in them. Wait, that's half mine, Jeremy blurts, his fork clattering onto the plate. His mother chimes in like clockwork. Absolutely, Jeremy. Married means shared assets. But I lean back in my chair and can't help but let out a laugh. Funny how you'd forget the prenup you shoved in my face. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours, wasn't it? Zoe, sitting next to Jeremy with a plate of untouched food, looks at him with a mix of shock and, is that disgust? Poor thing probably didn't sign up for this soap opera. Jeremy's face turns tomato red. That's before I knew you were coming into money, he shouts. I take another bite, savoring not just the meal, but the moment. I guess that's just tough luck, I say, giving him a wink. Zoe's eyes dart between us, clearly regretting her pick for the night, maybe for more than just tonight. And Jeremy, well, he's in full tantrum mode now, his napkin thrown down with a dramatic flourish. You know what, this is crap. You can't just. I cut him off, oh, but I can, and it seems like I just did. Dinner goes on, and with every petty jab they throw, I parry with the ease of someone with nothing to lose. Because, in this tacky dining room, with its gaudy chandelier and suffocating small talk, I've never felt freer. After all, there's no place like my own new home, however small and on the other side of town it may be. The sharp scent of roasted chicken mingled with the tang of tension in the air. The dining room felt smaller with every word Linda spat out. And tomorrow? Linda's cheeks flushed the same shade as the wine in her glass. I'm calling Mark. You'll be out of a job before you can say unemployment. Everyone at the table could hear the scrape of knife against the plate as Jeremy cut into his chicken, a little too forcefully. The sound rang out like an alarm, but I couldn't help it, I started laughing. It bubbled out, uncontrollable, a response so absurd against the backdrop of Linda's scowl. What's so funny? Linda practically hissed, her fork hovering midair. Jeremy's eyes were wide, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The room went still, ready for the drama to explode. Straightening up, I wiped the corner of my eye, still chuckling. You too, I said, shaking my head. You don't know the half of it. Their gazes were like hooks, waiting for the punchline. 4 months ago, I landed a new job. Head of a department, big trading company, paychecks double what I used to make. Silence slammed into the room like a wave. Linda's fork dropped with a clatter, but but it was Jeremy's face I savored. The mix of horror and envy was almost delicious. "No," Jeremy finally muttered, his voice a mix of disbelief and resentment. "Yep. I popped the P like bubblegum. And as for calling in favors, I don't need your connections anymore, Linda." Then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. "That'll be the movers," I said, shoving my chair back. The screech of its legs against the floor was a fitting soundtrack to Linda's dropped jaw. I sauntered to the door, heart pounding, but free. Opening it, there they were, a couple of burly guys with Hank's Moving Company stitched on their caps. "We're here for your stuff?" one of them asked, more stating than questioning. "Yep, everything that belongs to me, that I acquired even before I got involved with my hubby," I said, hitching a thumb toward the dining room where my soon-to-be ex-life was crumbling. The movers shrugged and shuffled by, heading straight for the dining room. Their heavy boots thudded on the hardwood, every step a nail in the coffin of this uncomfortable evening. Linda was standing now, her napkin forgotten on her plate. "You can't do this," she said, but the bite was gone from her voice. "Oh, but I am." There was a sense of joy saying that out loud, watching her struggle for words. Jeremy was hunched at the table, his face buried in his palms, the lines of his back tight like a strung bow. "Come on, don't do this. Not the sofa. Remember our movie nights?" His voice was a soft plea, a distant echo from a time that felt like a different life. I shook my head firmly. "The sofa's mine, Jib bought it with my own cash and you know it." Turning to the movers, I pointed at the bulky behemoth of a couch. "That thing needs to go first. Careful with it, it's pricier than it looks." Zoe sat frozen, her eyes wide like saucers. She looked like she wanted to melt into the woodwork. Linda was still shaking her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're cleaning us out, girl. What are we supposed to sit on? The floor?" Should have thought of that before Jeremy decided to play house with Miss Sunshine here. I didn't bother hiding the bitterness as I swept my hand towards Zoe. The movers were a symphony of grunts and commands, heaving up my furniture with practiced ease. The TV came off the wall with a pop, the dining table was dismantled with a clatter, and even the damn washing machine was unhooked with a series of clangs and splashes. Jeremy finally stood up, pushing away from the table. "You think you've won?" His voice wobbled with anger, his nostrils flaring. "Checkmate," I quipped, heading back towards the kitchen. Plates of uneaten food gazed up at me as I grabbed a bottle of soda, popping the cap and taking a swig. It wasn't champagne, but the fizz tasted like victory. The movers began hauling boxes, the heavy sound of cardboard thumping against the front door as they passed in and out. I walked back into the dining room, grabbing a few last personal items, a picture frame, a ceramic cat Jeremy always hated, and my favorite mug. All right, but the car too?" Jeremy stood up, his face flushed a deep red. "You can't be serious. How am I supposed to get to work?" I fished the car keys from my pocket, twirling them around my finger. "You should have read the fine print, baby. That car's in my name." I tossed the keys to one of the movers. "Park it outside my new place, will ya?" By the time we were done, the house was as bare as a skeleton, stripped clean. Linda sat on the hardwood floor, her back against the wall, while Jeremy stared through the gaping space where the TV once was. And before I turned to leave, with one last look at the shell of our shared past, I said, "You should thank me, really. It's not every day you get a fresh start, free from all the old junk." Linda was fuming, her hands clenched into fists that kept opening and closing. "You're nothing without this family," she spat out, every word a poison dart. Funny thing was, I felt lighter than I had in years. I looked at her, at Jeremy, at the life I was leaving behind. Jeremy watched me, eyes reddening, his chest heaving like he was running out of air. Greed, anger, regret, they were written all over him, and I knew, even as I turned my back on that chapter, I would never forget that look. Escaping the clamor of Jeremy's house, I breathed deep. The cool air was a slap to my skin, a wake-up call. I was free, but Jeremy wasn't going to let go without a fight. You think you've won, huh? Jeremy's voice came from behind the door. You'll regret this. Mark my words. You'll end up just an old hag with a bunch of cats. I could hear the anger boiling in his veins, but I didn't care. Done was done, and I was out of there. I was nearly at my car when the front door burst open again. There was Jeremy, red-faced and pompous. You know, I've got Zoe now. She's half your age and twice as hot. His barb was meant to wound, but it missed its mark. Because right then, Zoe herself appeared, flinging Jeremy's arm off her like it was a filthy rag. Keep dreaming, she snapped. She didn't even glance my way as she stomped down the steps, a fury in her heels. She was done playing the pretty little girlfriend prop. Jeremy stumbled after her like a man who'd just been kicked in the gut. Zoe, babe, don't be like that. Come on. But Zoe spun around, and the look she shot him would have curdled milk. Like what, Jeremy? Like someone who just saw the light. You're a jerk, and your mama? She's a dictator in a floral apron. I ain't marrying into this circus. The color drained from Jeremy's face, quicker than a leak in a balloon. He spluttered, no comebacks, no charm. This is it, Jeremy. We are done. Zoe's words were like nails in a coffin, precise and final. Jeremy's mother, Linda, had appeared in the doorway too, her face twisted like she'd swallowed something nasty. Zoe, you can't leave my boy. We had plans for you, she hissed, probably thinking of wedding bells and grandkids. But Zoe wasn't having a bar of it. I said, I'm done. Go find another puppet for your little show. She stormed off, her heels clicking like a ticking time bomb. There I was, leaning against my car, trying real hard not to let the grin split my face. Watching Jeremy and Linda shrink in the rearview mirror felt better than I'd imagined. Hey, and don't think you've gotten away with this. Jeremy was shouting, but his words were like rain against my car window, persistent but insignificant. I rolled down the window a sliver, just enough to let my voice carry. Actually, I think I just did. I gave him a look, one that said I knew I'd won, then rolled the window back up before he could spew another word. I hit the gas and didn't look back. In my rear view, Jeremy's figure got smaller, his rage drowned out by the growl of the engine. Ahead of me, the street stretched out, the night just beginning to shimmer with possibilities. Looking at the empty seat next to me, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of something like triumph, sweet and raw. No regrets, no looking back, I mused. Tonight, the getaway was all the dinner I needed. When my phone buzzed that morning, the last name I expected to flash on the screen was Zoe's. Yeah, that's her, the doll whose sharp tongue and don't care attitude had sent Jeremy and his mother Linda home with their tails between their legs. My lips curled into a smug grin. I swiped at the screen. Hey, Zoe. Hey, it's me. Just thought I'd ring you up, you know, to say thanks. Her voice chirped through. For what? I leaned back on my kitchen counter, a little confused but curious. For yesterday. You were freaking badass, opening my eyes about Jeremy and Linda. That, I laughed. It was a cold laugh, no joy in it. Trust me, I didn't do anything. You saw them for what they are, all on your own. Yeah, well, I just wanted to say I appreciate it. So, thank you, she insisted. I could hear the genuine tone in her voice. No problem. Just watch your back, okay? We said our goodbyes and hung up. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I tapped it against my chin, pondering the weirdness of it all. I had just been thanked by the woman who was fooling around with my ex-husband for helping her dodge a bullet. Life sure was strange. I mulled over my conversation with Zoe while I threw together a sandwich. The heel of the bread, some old cheese, and that last, sorry slice of ham. I wasn't in the mood for anything fancy. I slumped down at my tiny kitchen table, taking a bite out of the uneven sandwich. I chewed slowly, the bread dry and sticking to the roof of my mouth. That could have been me, stuck in that cycle with Jeremy and Linda. But it wasn't. I had broken free. Later that day, I sat down with a pen and a notepad. I was old school like that. A thank you note. Never thought I'd write one of those to my ex's side chick, but here we were. I scribbled quickly, not fussing over the words, just letting them spill out raw and real. I told Zoe she was welcome, that she was better off now, even if it didn't seem like it yet. I told her to keep her head high and to never let some two-timing jerk and his manipulative mom tell her who she was. And I signed it simply, with no flares or niceties. The note was brief, to the point. It was enough. I sealed it in an old envelope I found in a drawer, grabbed my keys, and headed out. I dropped the letter in the mailbox. No need for face-to-face, the words said it all. Walking back to my apartment, I kicked at a stray pebble. Life had given me lemons, and I didn't make lemonade. I threw those lemons back, hard. And now, I was helping others do the same. I had made peace with my past, with Jeremy, and surprisingly, I had made peace with Zoe too. The world kept turning, bizarre as it was, but at least for today, it was turning in my favor. The lawyer had one of them smirks when he handed me the last paper. "It's all yours now," he said, loud enough for Jeremy to hear across the room. "Nice doing business with you," I said, rolling my eyes a bit as I took the paperwork. The ink felt fresh and symbolic, the full stop at the end of a long, dragged-out story. Jeremy didn't say nothing. He just stood there, looking like someone had taken the ground out from under him. Probably realizing his mom's plan had backfired. Linda, she had a face like thunder, her lips thin, like she'd been sucking on lemons. "Can you believe this? After everything I did?" Linda's voice trailed off into a sort of hiss. I didn't answer, just clutched my papers a bit tighter. As I walked out of the court building and into my little car, that old thing that survived the marriage far better than I did, I caught Linda's eye. She was staring at me from her big, shiny car, probably feeling her age and her mistakes. "You got what you wanted, huh?" Jeremy puffed out as he caught up with me. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched. I turned to him, the feeling being finally free making me bold. "No, Jeremy, I got what I deserved. There's a difference." My phone beeped. A message from Stella, a friend who'd stuck by me like glue. "Drinks tonight?" I couldn't help but smile. Stella got it. "Hell, yes," I texted back. As I slipped into the driver's seat, there was a quiet. Not the uneasy quiet like at Jeremy's place, but the kind that lets you hear yourself think. As the engine came to life with a familiar rattle, I felt something twist in my stomach. Excitement? Nerves? My new home felt different now. I stepped inside, the echo of my footsteps the only welcome, but it was enough. My eyes roamed over the place. It was a mess of boxes and furniture that had seen better days. But it was mine. I spent the next few hours moving stuff around, unpacking, and tossing what I didn't need. I made room, my room, a space that felt more like me by the minute. Next day, I drove to work. Work was the kind of busy that kept thoughts at bay and made the day fly by. At lunch, the girls were all ears. "You okay?" Jess, the office gossip, asked, her eyes all concern and curiosity. "Better than okay," I answered with no shadow of a lie. The drive home was meditative, the road stretched like my future, uncertain, yeah, but mine all the same. That night, Stella and I hit the bar. It was loud and full, just like life should be. We tossed back drinks and threw our heads back with laughter that drew looks. "To new beginnings," Stella said, holding up her glass. "To tomorrow," I replied. And we drank to that. Tomorrow and the day after and all the days to follow. Because that's the thing about tomorrow, it's always on its way, and now, so was I, ready for whatever the hell it decided to bring.